So it has been 15 years this week since the Garmin Forerunner 305 GPS watch was announced at CES 2006. This watch is arguably the most important GPS watch, like from a historical standpoint. It's the one that really began the entire GPS watch revolution. And it'd be that starting point there that would ultimately take us to their latest, greatest Forerunner 945 GPS watch. That's like the official lineage if you were to follow from the 305 to the 310 to the 910 to the 920 to the 935 all the way to the 945. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna take these watches out side by side for a run and see what the accuracy actually looks like 15 years later. But before we do that, I need to take you through the watch itself, just briefly, just to get a bit of an understanding of the user interface on this. Because once we start running with the GoPro, it's gonna be nearly impossible for you to see the screen itself. And the first thing you gotta do is to turn it on. Because remember, back in the day, this wasn't a 24/7 watch. You only wore this for workout. So we'll go ahead and just turn it on, hold that button up there, and there we go, the good old Garmin Forerunner. And it's on. It's that simple. Now it's going to locate satellites right away. Given I'm under a gigantic building, it won't actually find anything. So we'll just go press mode to get rid of that. And here's your data pages. It just simply assumes, in this case, my last sport, so it's running. There is no like menus, there's no time screen, all the kind of stuff that you expect from today's watches doesn't really exist. Like here is a 945 side by side. You've got, you know, what you've been doing today and all that jazz. You can see the thickness there is quite different, just the size. I mean, it's just an absolute beast. So off the side there, to get into the settings though, we'll just hold this mode button down for a second. There we go. And I can see my history. I can see training. This is where you go in and load up things like workouts and courses. Keep in mind, these things in some ways are still not offered on their competitor devices. There are devices that have been launched in the last couple months that do not have structural workout support. They do not have course following support. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Back in the day, this had auto multi-sport, but there was no like true swimming support, no open water swimming support or indoor pool support. Mostly because it wasn't actually waterproof. I'm not kidding. This was IPX7 waterproof, but not for swimming. So IPX7 means that you can go 1 meter deep for 30 minutes. And that was true. You could do that, and I tested that. But if you went swimming, the impact of the stroke onto the water was enough that it would actually kill the watch. Anyways, scrolling down through some of these menus here, you can see not a ton of options. Navigation, I can do mark location. I can find, I can go back to start. So there's my routes. I can even look at the satellite status. How cool is that? You can't do that today. Like, I love this little screen. I didn't really know what to do with it, but I loved it, and that's what mattered. So going back a bit more there, let's see what else we got. Into settings, you can see general. This is where I set up my data fields. You had your main screens, another set of main screens. Yes, I'm indoors now, so you can stop asking about satellites. I had my running, cycling, take a little lag there, and other, which was like, I like how they use the skiing icon. That's the way they thought back then. Running, cycling, skiing, obviously. But that's all right. I appreciate this. And I can go in here, I can change these data fields, up to 4 data fields, down to 1 data field there. Super visible, super easy to see. The backlight, let me just show you that right here. If I get it turned on, it's that glowing, almost like Timex Indiglow, but not quite. So anyways, cracking out of this into system, GPS was simple. It was on or off, like normal, or back again, go down here, accessories. This is where I would pair things because there was no optical heart rate sensor on the back. So I had to pair up this older Garmin strap. This is the same exact style of strap that came with 305 back then. Not sure if this is the exact same strap that came in my box. Probably not. This one looks like almost unused, but probably came with another device in the last little while. But it did support cadence sensors and foot pods, so you could go ahead and use those as well. So once you got all that jazz ready to roll, you just go back here, and then you just simply press start. And that's it. Like that's all there is to it. To change your data fields, you'd go up and down. So here we go. Current lap, average pace, heart rate, current lap, pace, lap distance, and heart rate. And then there we go, back again to start. And what's funny about this is exactly how I would have configured it way back when. In fact, these were my original data fields from over a decade ago, whatever, probably 13, 14 years ago that I last used this watch. And that's all there is to it. I hit a lap button there to do that manually, or as you'll see out in the run, auto lap, which is a good time to note before we head back outside. If you're finding this video interesting or useful, hilarious, informative, or anything really, just simply hit that like button at the bottom there. It really helps out this video and the channel quite a bit. With that, let's start running. Okay, so I only have 2 hands here, so I'm gonna try to do this holding that button down for 1 second. There we go. Forerunner 305 is going to locate satellites. Now, you remember back in the day, you did not have this as an always-on watch. You only wore it for sports activity. So satellite reception took a bit of time. In this case, it was pretty darn quick, mostly because I had already got satellites earlier this morning here in this area, which is what you would usually do. You went for a run, and then you had satellites in that particular area. And then later on, the next time you ran, a day or two later, it knew roughly where you were. So everything else set, we're going to get going here. I've got for comparison not only the Forerunner 945, I have an Apple Watch SE I'll be hand carrying, as well as a Polar Grid X just for extra data. And my shoes down there, I even have GPS pods too, just to complete this awkward picture. So let's go ahead and press the start button and begin. There we go, timer started. Off we go. Distance is already accumulating. So for today's route, today's run, take my normal GPS test route. One that has trees and big buildings and a running track, stadium, like it's got all the things to throw at it to see how well it holds up. So coming up here in a second, I got the 1 mile marker. I'm interested to see which ones chirp and beep at the same time or different times. So right now it's 0.97 miles, 0.98, 0.98, 0.99 on the 305, and exactly to the second the same as the 945. You heard the chirp of the 945 because it's closer to the camera, but the 305 chirped at the exact same second. And there went the Polar Grid X, coming a bit late, and the Apple Watch SE is paused. Of course it's paused. Okay, so we just crossed into the wait for the ambulance to go by. So we're just crossing under these tunnels right here, and these tunnels, as you can see, are massive, sorry, bridges, not tunnels, but they go under the main highways that lead into Amsterdam, both for cars as well as numerous rail lines for trains. And so all in, you can hear one right out and above. There's probably 10 lines of car traffic and half a dozen rail lines up there. But as you're seeing, the bridges drop out. So it's a great place to test for GPS and see how well it handles sort of rough conditions. And I'm looking for it not to drop any errant GPS points like 100 meters away or something like that. Should be a straight line. But to see that one after the fact. Coming out of the tunnel, 2.11 on the 305, 2.11 on the 945. So as I've been running, I'm doing lots of 90-degree corners and turns, but in particular, I'm bringing out this little island out here, which has a bunch of sharp turns, but more importantly, has no tolerance for GPS accuracy error. As you can see, it'll be super obvious if I'm in the water or up in the grass up here, hanging out the pigeons, the swans. So I often use this tiny little island, not much bigger than 2 football fields, to test just how accurate devices really are. Now, for one of my last tests here, we're going to drop down onto the running track. One of the hardest things for GPS devices to get correct is to be in the correct lane, or heck, even on the track while you're running, because of the constant curving nature. Now, I'm not going to cheat and put the 945 in a track mode, which would immediately lock into this lane, though that would give you a beautiful GPS track. I want to see how accurate it is in just regular mode. That's mile marker number 4 coming up, and here we are, and boom, right there. One of the things I'm noticing as I'm running that straightaway back there is how much more variable the pace is on the 305 than the 945. Certainly a lot more fluctuations than the 945, but at least the overall distance seems to be pretty darn close at this point. So with that, we are back at our starting spot. Go ahead and get the quick stop. So looking at the 3 watches here, we've got the Forerunner 305 at 5.11 miles, the 945 at 5.13 miles, the Polar Grid X at 5.06 miles, the pause down there, we'll just see when we get back, and the Apple Watch had that delayed pause thing, so I ended up resetting that, starting it so we can at least look at the GPS track once we get back inside. So with that, let's look at the actual data. Actually, first, fun tidbit, when you save a run on the Forerunner 305, you actually just hold down the reset button and hope for the best. So watch, here's what happens. Hold this down, 3, 2, 1, and then everything goes away and you hope it's saved. There is no summary screen, none of that stuff existed back then. You can go to the history and find it, but you just had to hope that it did the right thing right then. Okay, so back inside, here's how this all worked. You took your Garmin and you put it on an almost equally as large cradle. This cradle was mini USB, as you can see right there. So not micro USB, mini USB. And then I actually used Garmin Express. Back in the day, you used Garmin Training Center, a different desktop software. But today I was able to use legitimately the current version of Garmin Express. It found my 305, linked it up to my Garmin Connect account, and then it synced the data in. And a couple seconds later, I actually received a Strava notification. So here is a device 15 years later, automatically syncing to Strava. So once I got my activities, they were visible on Garmin Connect. I could see them there, but I wanted to see what it looked like from an accuracy standpoint. So with that, I loaded up all those files into the DCR analyzer to see how they look. So here's the high level comparing the 945, the Apple Watch SE with the delayed start, the Nerve GPS insoles, the Polar Grid X, and the 305. And if we just kind of roll down into this here, I'm just going to kind of show you a couple different spots there. The 305 is in red right there, so we're going to zoom in a bunch and just kind of look at some of the straightaways. And by and large, it's all pretty close on the straightaway itself. Like there's no major differences there for the most part. They're all right on. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to remove some of the extra stuff on this and just really narrow it down to the 945 and the 305, just so you can get rid of all the other stuff there. Okay, so with those hidden, you can see it's almost identical. A little bit of differences right here as I kind of go to this earlier wooded area. And it's kind of a wash. Sometimes the 305 is closer on the trail, sometimes the 945. Very, very similar right there. A couple areas here where you see the 305 goes off into the bushes for a second for no particular good reason. As I go up this roadway right here, you see that the 945 is actually out in the middle of the street. So this is an area where the 305 is beating it. You know, it's not, might not last that long, but it's beating it. So get a little closer, we get at final those bridges. Where'd that bridge go? So here we go, right at the bridge itself. Both of the units actually for the first bridge go correctly under it. So they managed to converge at the last second before the bridge. They stay under it. A bit of some wobbles that you see there from the 305 track. I mean, not a huge amount, but definitely more wobbly than the 945 straight through that. And then as I go up here, we'll keep on going. Now I did a loop around the stadium. I didn't show it in the video because it was just getting too long. I wanted to see how it worked. I did both a inverted and other inverted loop. So basically both directions. So one side was against the stadium, and then the other side was against the stadium. And you see very, very close. The 305 is a bit more variable though. Again, kind of the pattern that you're seeing here. It's not quite as crispy as the 945 was, since I ran the exact same spots both time. Going on to the island that I showed there, it's good. Like, it's not perfect. It's not as perfect. That 945 track is exactly where I ran across the bridge. The 305 track is like, yeah, we're close enough. We're good enough. This is fine. And you can see it's good. Into the running track, the 305 nailed this. This was really, really good. The 945 was a bit further out because smart recording got turned on that. So it's not going to update as frequently around those turns there. And again, it wasn't in track mode. If I wanted perfect track accuracy, I would have put the 945 in true track mode, would have locked, and it would have been beautiful. But this is a really damn good 305 track. Like the rest of the run is like, yeah, so-so. And you see that right here. The 305 is like on the wrong side of the path again. It's off wandering over in the bushes. It's on the railroad tracks now. But you know, hey, we can ignore some things. And that's sort of the gist. If I look at the rest of the track, it's basically kind of the same thing, where it's easy to forget some of the times that 305 wasn't quite as accurate as we remember. Yet other times, hey, the running track, it's spot on. And that's what's sort of fun to look back on this stuff and kind of figure out, was it actually as accurate as we thought? What is as good as we thought? But still, it's pretty darn impressive. This thing, 15 years old, easily beat the GPS tracks of the Fitbit Sense and the Fitbit Versa 3 that I tested this past fall. Brand new top-of-the-line units from Fitbit. And again, it's rocking like a decade and a half of vintageness here. This thing has been beaten, battered, all the goodness. This is my original watch. Like, I have put this thing through the ringer, and it's still pretty solid. Anyways, hopefully you found this interesting or funny or something like that. Just something different. I thought it's interesting to look back at this kind of stuff and see what it really was like and see how accurate things really were and how much of it's more just, you know, our memories getting a bit faded over time, both from accuracy and features and all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, at this point, I've got to turn it off because I can't use it like as a watch. It's off now. It's gonna go back in the bucket. Maybe we'll pull it out at 30 years. It should be good times. Again, if you found this interesting, whack that like button, hit the subscribe button for plenty more sports technology goodness. And with that, have a good one.